Alright, coming at you with another top-down video, and this time we're going to talk about my venerable iPhone XR. This can be an off-the-cuff video, so excuse any rambling, but I feel this is notable because I've had this phone since December of 2018. If you've been around the channel long enough, you'll know that I tend to switch phones more often than I change my clothes. So this being around for more than a couple of months in and of itself is pretty amazing. What changed? Why have I kept this phone? And what do you like about it, pretty much? So starting way back, I got tired of Apple with the iPhone X and how they botched the repair by not sealing down the screen properly. And when I complained that the camera's OIS had quit working, they replaced it, I guess, with a camera that was just as defective. So at that point, I sold off the 10 to a friend of mine and switched to a Galaxy S9. The Galaxy S9 was the phone that ultimately drove home the point of why I don't like Android very much as a daily driver phone, and that's that Android is really inconsistent. I don't really care much for how Android is great at some things, but then it's great sometimes. It's like, if you understand the reference, it's like Sex Panther. It works 60% of the time, all the time. And what I mean by that is the S9 had a really good camera. It had the dual aperture camera that's really good in low light. And I did like that feature. The problem with it is when I'm just using it as a take anywhere, shoot anything camera, it kind of just falls flat, because you have to really set up the shots to get that thing to look absolutely amazing. And the problem with setting up shots on a smartphone is, if I really want to set up a shot, I've got this to take my pictures. If I'm going to set up a shot, I'm going to bring this out. I'm not going to use my phone. My phone is just my take anywhere. Hey, I think that looks interesting, I'm going to snap a shot of it. The problem with that is sometimes I'm away and I do want to get a good picture of something. I'm away from my main camera and I want to count on my phone to produce a result that I'm not terribly ashamed of. The S9 failed that test pretty often, and it just did not endear me to the phone at all. The other issue is UI performance being inconsistent. Now, when I first set it up, and for the first month or so, everything was great, but then after that, it feels like the phone just really starts to slow down. And I'm pretty sure if you really put it to a timer, it's not slowing down, but the UI lag that has been present in Android for as long as I can remember. And keep in mind, I've been on and off Android since RC27 on the G1. So yeah, I've been here pretty much since the beginning. And they've gotten much better at managing the UI lag, but it still rears its ugly head, and I'm just not terribly a fan of when the UI lags, because it makes the phone feel slow, even if it actually isn't slow. The other reason I got off the S9 is because I saw Android Pie coming, and personally on my daily driver phone, I was not a fan of it. You may be thinking, well, why do you have a Pixel 3a then? But the Pixel 3a is not my main phone. It is my secondary phone. So it's really my Android Play thing, so I don't really care so much about Android Pie being on that, because, again, it's not my daily driver phone. If something happens to it, I'm not up the creek without a paddle, essentially. So, enough about Android mostly being an inconsistent mess that I don't like on my daily driver phone. I guess one more thing, speaking of the inconsistency, is the battery life, which crosses into what's good about this phone. The battery life on the S9 is alright. The problem with Android is wake locks, and as much as people want to keep saying we've solved that problem, there's doze, there's all these wonderful little things in the background that apparently fix the issue. I've woken up more times than I can count with my S9 being almost completely dead because some process managed to spin lock itself and drain the battery. With this, I frequently don't even plug this thing in before I go to bed. In fact, I've not charged this thing since last night, and as you can see, it's 4 in the morning, and we still got a mostly full battery. So it's very nice to have a consistent phone that doesn't change at the drop of a hat, because that's another problem with Android that I have, is that Google Play services gets updated. Features that you may have once depended on may suddenly disappear at Google's behest, and there's really nothing you can do about it. With this, it's all consistent. I don't have to worry about features miraculously disappearing, though there is one that has, and that's the Play Next option on Apple Music, because I don't know why it comes and goes as it does, but that's minor. But I don't have to worry about things like that. I don't have to worry about Apple getting a wild stick up their asses and changing something radically between OS versions. The only time they've really done this is with iOS 7, and you can argue that iOS 7 still had a lot of the same things in the same places. It just was a very much needed coat of paint by that time. So let's go on to what I like about the XR. Starting with the battery life that I just mentioned. I feel like this is the 10 perfected, because my 10, I liked the 10. I liked the way it felt like in the hand, because, the stainless steel sides. That thing felt like a unit of a phone, and I really liked it because of that. Not so much here, but if we're talking about like things like Face ID, the notched display and such, this really is the 10 perfected, because the 10 would have issues reading my face at certain angles I use the phone at all the time. This one, not so much. It's still there, but I can still, it's not so much that I have to like angle the phone obnoxiously for it to see my face. So I'm very happy with that. It's much faster at picking up my face than the 10 was. Just everything feels improved. The 10 felt like kind of like a beta product to me, and the XR feels more refined, and I'm sure the XS would feel just as refined. The display is another point of contention I keep hearing so much about. In fact, Jerry Rig Everything, his video on the XR was mostly him just bashing the display, and some may care about it. I'm not saying if you care about it that you're wrong. Personally, in my opinion, the display is completely and totally fine. It's a bigger phone, but keeps the same pixel density as the iPhone 8. So it's still very good quality. You don't see pixels, and you really don't notice any quality unless you're like using an original iPhone 10 app that has not been scaled up to work on the XS Max, because this shares the same scaling factor as the XS Max. So if the app is not scaled for the phone, then it's gonna look blurry and like garbage. But the 720, the so-called 720p display, which is, I think it's 768p actually, I don't notice any issues with it. I really do not. I don't notice the lower resolution. I don't know the supposed drop in quality, and I'm going to take a wild guess that a lot of the people who bash the XR's display are the OLED fanboys that I absolutely detest with every fiber of my being, because while I will agree that OLED is a pretty neat little display technology, it has its faults, and personally that's why I'm not going to ever choose a phone with OLED if I can help it, because this phone, what I like about it is if I'm on a long trip, I can use Google Maps and just throw it in the car dock and be completely fine. I don't have to worry about what's on the display. I don't have to worry about anything like that. Nothing's going to burn into an IPS LCD. Whereas on the XS and other OLED phones, you have to be careful with what's on the display or it will burn into the display. Now, micro LED is supposed to fix this issue, but we'll see when it comes out. I hope it does, because OLED is great, but the burn-in and blue shift and black crush are issues that ultimately steer me far away from it. The blue shift is one of the more annoying things, because it happens if you look at your phone at even and off angle. Apple has minimized it, but it's still there, and it feels like my retinas are getting burned out when I have to look at a phone with blue shift. OLED as a whole and its color reproduction just makes me, it's really uncomfortable to my eyes, and that's why I personally like the XR over the 10 and XS, because it doesn't hurt my eyes. But as far as that's concerned, I mean, the only thing I really miss having this phone is dual cameras, because you get portrait mode on here, but the problem is that portrait mode is software based, like the Google Pixel, but obviously Apple doesn't have the AI chops that Google does, so it only really works with certain subjects. Whereas with my Pixel 3a, I could grab this and take a picture of it, this inanimate object, and it would know what it needs to blur out for the most part, and it would work pretty nice. So I think the conclusion is maybe the XR is great to me because I went into it with tempered expectations. Like the Intel chip modem in here, I was expecting garbage, and this thing has blown past my expectations. As far as I can tell, I've had no issue with this thing, and my Intel 8 Plus was not very nice to me, so again, maybe it's because I went in here with really tempered expectations that the XR really surprised me, and why I still have it to this day, and I have no real desire to ditch it. The only phone I'd want to ditch it for is, you know, a XS, even though I really don't care for it as much because of the OLED display, but because I miss having the dual cameras on the back. It was a really neat feature. I love having that feature in hardware rather than software because I would like to use this for portrait mode, but unfortunately really can't do that with inanimate objects and things that are not people or I believe dogs. So yeah, this is pretty much the XR summarized. I've had it for a few months. I can see myself keeping it well into the next iPhone, unless Apple blows us away and T-Mobile has a really aggressive upgrade promo for the next iPhones, like they did with the Pixel 3a when it came out. Because how I got that phone is I just gave them my Galaxy S8 and they gave me a 3a XL for free pretty much. So that's the only way I can see myself upgrading, but even then I wouldn't want to upgrade because this is a unbranded, carrier-neutral device, and dealing with T-Mobile's unlock policy is something I'd rather not do anymore because they are really strict about it now, even though we've been with T-Mobile for almost 10 years at this point, which really makes me sad because it used to be that you could ask them very nicely and they would generally grant you an exception based on customer tenure. But now it's like if it has even a cent of balance left on it, and due to the way T-Mobile does their promos now where they'll pay off your phone, but it has to be over 24 months, your phone is never paid off until, you know, the 2 years is up, therefore you're not going to get it unlocked. So unless Apple offers a really aggressive promo like they did this year, I see myself holding on to this for a while. So hopefully you enjoyed this little off-the-cuff look back at the XR as we head into new iPhone season because, you know, next month, new iPhones, and I will see you around.